So let's talk about the American economy. The source material we're digging into here makes a pretty bold claim that there isn't just one economy, but two completely separate worlds of work with a huge and honestly a pretty dangerous gap between them. In this explainer, we're going to chart the journey across that gap, a path that was always sold as a ladder to success, but now, well, it seems to be broken.
Okay, so what does this actually mean? On one side, you've got what they call the FTE sector. That's full-time employment. Think of it as the world of stable careers, good pay, health benefits, and a real chance to move up. But on the other side, you have the low-wage sector. This is the world of temp jobs, service work, where wages are low, they barely budge, and climbing any kind of career ladder feels next to impossible. The analysis is clear. These aren't just different kinds of jobs, they are entirely different economic realities.
So here's the million-dollar question, right? How are you supposed to get from one side to the other? For generations, the answer was always the same: education. Go to college, get a degree, and that was your ticket to a better life. But the research we're exploring today shows that this path, this supposed ladder, is now just full of obstacles.
So where does this ladder first start to break? Well, it turns out the first major hurdle pops up way before you even think about getting a job. It all comes down to a simple but crucial question: who actually gets to finish college in the first place?
And when you look at the numbers, it's pretty eye-opening. For students from the bottom quarter of household incomes, only about a third of them who start college actually graduate, just a third. But for students from the wealthiest top quarter, that number literally doubles. 2/3 of them finish. It just goes to show that while lots of people start the journey, having money plays a massive role in who actually makes it to the destination.
And get this is where the money factor becomes just impossible to ignore. The data shows that even when you look at students who don't score that well on tests, a student from a rich family is 4 times more likely to graduate than a student from a poor family. It suggests that money buys you a kind of safety net, It helps you get through the tough spots, a safety net that just isn't there for everybody else.
Okay, so let's say you do it. You beat the odds. You come from a low-income background, you work your tail off, and you get that degree. You'd think you're golden, right? Well, not so fast, because even with that diploma in your hand, you're about to run into a second, almost invisible barrier.
I mean, how frustrating is that? You did everything you were supposed to do, you got the degree, so why isn't it enough to land that good job? The analysis points to something that isn't on any syllabus. It's this hidden advantage that a lot of people have and don't even realize it.
This invisible advantage has a name: social capital. It's your network. It's who you know. It's the family friends, the old college buddies, the people who can give you a heads up about a job opening, or, even better, put in a good word for you. For a lot of people in the professional world, this is how they get jobs. But if you're the first in your family to go to college, if you're coming from the low-wage world, that built-in network often just doesn't exist.
Now here's the thing. These hurdles, they're not just random bad luck. The analysis we're looking at shows they're part of a much bigger systemic trap. The very system for paying for college was changed, piece by piece, over decades, making that climb from one economy to the other harder and harder.
Just look at this timeline. It shows this massive shift in policy. Back in 1975, states and local governments paid for about 60% of the costs of higher education. But then, starting around 1980, that support just started to vanish. Fast forward to 2010, and public funding covered only 35%. Public universities were basically being starved of funds. So where do you think all that missing money came from? Yep, it got passed directly onto students and their families. As that public money disappeared, tuition at major state universities, even after you account for inflation, shot up by an incredible 250%. That ladder didn't just get steeper, suddenly every single rung had a giant price tag on it.
This huge funding gap opened the door for something new: for-profit colleges. They grew like wildfire, largely by taking federal student aid. And the result? Well, it was a disaster for many students. While these schools only enrolled about 12% of all students, they were responsible for nearly half of all student loan defaults. Just think about that. They often left students with a mountain of debt and no real path into that stable, full-time economy.
But these are all big numbers and abstract policies. What does this actually feel like for a real person? This is where the story shifts from data to the very real human cost of this broken system.
So let's meet Liz Kelley. Her story starts with a dream that so many people have.
She was what they call a non-traditional student, already married, had kids, and she was trying to do exactly what we've been talking about, use education to build a career as a teacher and get into that FTE sector.
And she did it. She got her degree in 1994. But she started out with $42,000 in student debt. That's a pretty hefty sum to begin with. But unfortunately for her, that was just the tip of the iceberg.
And then, life happened. The kind of stuff you just can't plan for. She got really sick. Then the 2008 financial crash hit, and her husband lost his job. And all the while, in the background, that student loan, it was just quietly growing and growing and growing, thanks to the accumulating interest.
After decades of just trying to stay afloat, navigating one crisis after another, she got a notice from her loan servicer. That original $42,000 she borrowed, it had ballooned into an absolutely staggering, life-crushing sum, over $410,000.
And Liz's story, it's just devastating. But the thing is, it's not some one-off tragedy. It's a snapshot of a much bigger American story, one where that finish line of economic security seems to have become a dead end for so many people.
And this all brings us to a really fascinating idea that kind of ties it all together. It's called the Great Gatsby curve. It's a term economists use for a pattern they see all over the world. And it's simple. The more income inequality a country has, the harder it is for people to move up from the economic situation they were born into. Basically, it means the rungs of the ladder get farther and farther apart.
So we're left with this really tough question. We've all been told the story, right? That education is the ladder, the great equalizer, the ticket to the American dream. But this analysis forces us to ask, what happens to that dream when the rungs on that ladder, affordability, who you know, the system itself, are just broken?